Hello, my friends. My name is Mr. Nighty Night. On this episode, I have a story for you. So get comfortable, curl up with your favorite blanket, maybe grab a snack, and prepare yourself. If you like what you're hearing, and you like the story, consider subscribing and liking the video. But for now, remember that vacation may not always be what it seems, and a getaway destination may not always be peaceful. So just be careful when you find yourself at the cabin. We weren't the first to visit the cabin. That much became clear when we found the diary. Our group had been looking for a remote retreat, somewhere to escape the daily grind. A secluded cabin found deep in the woods with no phone reception seemed perfect. We arrived with high hopes, ready for a week of relaxation, but from the moment we stepped inside, something felt off. The cabin was old and dusty, with a musty smell lingering in the air. It was immediately clear that no one had stayed here for a long time, but it was the diary we found on the table, half buried under a pile of old newspapers, that caught our attention. The pages were worn and yellowed, the ink smudged but still readable. We took turns reading aloud, and as we did, the temperature in the room seemed to drop. The diary's entries were written in a daily basis, describing events that made our blood run cold. This is what the diary said. Mike and I had been drowning in work for what felt like an eternity. Deadlines, meetings, endless tasks. It was a relentless grind that left us both exhausted, our minds frayed and our spirits dulled. The constant pressure had worn us down to the bone, and when we finally got a week off, it felt like a lifeline had been thrown to drowning men. Mike's uncle owned a cabin deep in the woods, far from the city with no phone reception and nothing but the forest for miles. It was the perfect escape, a place where time moved slower and the worries of the world couldn't reach us. We loaded the cars with supplies early in the morning, leaving behind the concrete jungle, the endless noise, and the suffocating chaos of the city. The further we drove, the more it felt like we were shedding the weight of our lives, leaving behind the stress, the exhaustion, and the ceaseless demands. The road narrowed as we ventured deeper into the woods, the trees growing taller and thicker, their branches intertwining to form a canopy that blocked out the sun. The air became dense with the scent of pine, earthly and fresh, filling our lungs with each breath. It felt as if the forest was closing in on us, wrapping us in its embrace and drawing us into its depths. The cabin appeared suddenly, a solitary structure nestled in the heart of the forest, surrounded by a sea of trees. It was old, with weathered wood and a sloping roof, the windows dark and still. As we pulled up, a strange feeling washed over me, a sensation that we were entering a different world, a place untouched by time, where the rules of reality no longer applied. The first night was peaceful. We unpacked our bags, lit a fire in the old stove, and settled in with a bottle of whiskey we had brought along. The cabin was small, with creaky wooden floors that groaned underfoot, and walls that seemed to breathe with the weight of years. There was something comforting about its age, as though it had seen countless visitors before us and kept their secrets, guarding them in the shadows. The fire crackled in the stove, casting a warm glow over the room, and we talked about everything and nothing, letting the stress of our lives melt away. The whiskey warmed our insides, and for the first time in months, I felt a sense of peace. But as the night wore on, something strange began to happen. It started with an odd smell, faint at first, but unmistakable. It was the scent of decay, like something long dead and forgotten. We shrugged it off, blaming it on the old cabin or perhaps a dead animal nearby. But as the hours passed, the smell grew stronger, more persuasive. It clung to our clothes, our skin, and lingered in the air even after we left the room. No matter where we went in the cabin, the smell followed us, an invisible presence that we couldn't escape. The next day, we decided to explore the surrounding woods, hoping the fresh air would clear out our heads and banish the lingering unease. The forest was thick, the trees towering above us like ancient sentinels, their branches knitting together to block out the sun. The further we walked, the denser the forest became, the path winding and twisting as though the woods themselves were leading us somewhere, drawing us deeper into their embrace. We stumbled upon the clearing, almost by accident, a barren patch of ground in the middle of the woods where the trees were blackened and twisted, their trunks charred as if by some intense heat. The ground was scorched, the earth cracked and dry, as though the life had been sucked out of it. In the center of the clearing lay a deer, its body contorted in an unnatural position, its skin peeled back to reveal muscle and bone. There was no blood. The ground beneath it was dry, as though whatever had done this had drained it completely. What could have done this? I asked, my voice barely a whisper, the words catching in my throat. Mike didn't answer. He was staring at the deer, his face pale, his eyes wide with something that looked like fear. Fear and something else, something I couldn't quite place. His hands were trembling, the knuckles white as he clenched his fists. We didn't linger long. The smell of decay was overwhelming now, thick in the air, driving us back towards the cabin. That night, the smell returned, stronger than ever. It seeped through the walls, through the floor, filling every corner of the cabin with its sickly sweet scent. We tried to ignore it, to convince ourselves that it was just the old wood, the musty air, but sleep was impossible. The shadows in the room seemed to move, twisting and shifting in the flickering firelight, their shapes unnatural, wrong. The silence was deafening, pressing in on us, broken only by a low, distant hum that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. Mike was the first to hear it. "Do you hear that?" he asked, his voice trembling and his eyes darting around the room. At first, I didn't hear anything, but then it came, a faint scratching, like nails on wood, coming from outside. It was slow, deliberate, as if something was trying to get in, testing the walls, the window, looking for a way inside. We grabbed a flashlight and the hunting knife Mike had found earlier and huddled together, our breaths shallow, our hearts pounding in our chests. We listened, strained to hear, but nothing came. The scratching stopped just before dawn, leaving us in a tense, uneasy silence that hung in the air. The next day, we tried to leave, to escape the suffocating presence of the cabin and the forest. But no matter which decision we took, no matter which direction we went, the roam seemed to loop back on itself, leading us in circles until we found ourselves back at the cabin, the trees closing in tighter each time. It was as if the forest was alive, a living, breathing entity that had trapped us within its grasp, twisting the path until there was no way out. The walls of the cabin, once comforting in their old age, now felt like a cage, closing in around us, the air thick with the scent of decay. Mike began to change after that. He grew distant, his skin pale and clammy, his eyes hollow and sunken. He stopped eating, stopped talking, and spent hours staring at the walls, muttering to himself in a voice I couldn't understand. At night, I could hear him scratching his arms, as if trying to peel something off of his skin, his nails digging into his flesh until it bled. On the fourth night, I woke up to find Mike standing by the window, staring out into the darkness, his breath fogging the glass. "It's inside me," he whispered, his voice barely audible, his words sending a chill down my spine. "What is?" I asked, dread curling in my stomach, my heart pounding in my chest. He didn't answer, just lifted his shirt, revealing his chest. Beneath the skin, something moved, writhing and twisting, as if trying to escape, as if it were alive. I recoiled in horror, bile rising in my throat as I backed away. "We need to get out of here," I stammered, my voice trembling and my eyes shaking. But Mike shook his head, a hollow laugh escaping his lips, his eyes glassy, unfocused. "There is no leaving," he said, his voice tinged with madness, his words echoing in the silence. "It's part of us now." The cabin, the forest, it was all connected, part of something ancient and malevolent, something that had been waiting for us, drawing us in. The smell, the clearing, the twisted trees, they were all signs, warnings we had ignored. And now it was too late. We were trapped, caught in the web of something we couldn't understand. Something was slowly consuming us. That night, I stayed up, unable to sleep, my eyes fixed on the shadows that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. The smell was everywhere, filling my lungs, seeping into my skin, into my mind. I could feel it now, under my skin, crawling through my veins, a sickness no medicine could cure. But I fought it, clinging to my last shreds of sanity, the last remnants of who I was. I'm still here, but Mike is gone, vanished into the forest, yet I remain. The smell is inside me, the scratching in my mind, but I fight it. I stay awake, keep the fire burning, because I know that once the light goes out, it will take me too. The fire is my only defense, the only thing keeping the darkness at bay. I don't know how long I've been here. Days, weeks, it all blurs together. Time losing all meaning in this place. The road still leads back to the cabin, the trees closing in tighter each time I try to leave, their branches clawing at me, pulling me back. But I'm still alive. I write this down hoping that somebody will find it, that somebody will understand what happened here, that they will heed my warning. The fire is dying now. the flames flickering, casting long shadows that dance on the walls. The scratching is getting louder, the sounds of wood on nail, the smell stronger, filling every breath, every thought. I can feel it growing inside of me, but I won't let it win. I can't. I'll fight it until the end, until there's nothing left of me to fight. If you find this, don't come looking for me. Don't come here at all. Just stay away. This place, it's not what it seems. It's a trap, a snare, waiting for those who are foolish enough to enter. And once you're here, there's no escape. No way out. Only the smell, the scratching, and the darkness that waits. When we finish reading, a heavy silence settles over us. The diary's contents were horrifying, but we initially dismissed them as elaborate fiction, one of those local legends designed to scare off visitors. It seemed too fantastical, too outlandish to be taken seriously. However, as we lingered in the cabin's oppressive atmosphere, thick, suffocating, and cold, we began to feel a creeping sense of dread. "We need to get out of here," someone finally said, their voice barely a whisper, crackling with fear. We packed up quickly, the diary carefully wrapped and stowed away. The road back felt endless, the trees pressing in as if they were trying to keep us there. The oppressive sense of being watched never left us, and we couldn't shake the feeling that there was something following us. Back in the safety of our own homes, we debated with what to do with the diary. It felt too dangerous to simply discard, so we turned it over to local authorities, hoping they could investigate and perhaps put an end to the horrors described within. Months later, one of our friends, skeptical and curious, decided to visit the cabin on a dare. He was determined to prove that the diary was just a hoax. We tried to dissuade him, but his resolve was unshakable. He went alone, armed with nothing but his bravado and a camera. He never came back. A search party was sent, but all they found was the cabin, eerily quiet and untouched. In a room, they discovered a roughly written note on a single page, scrawled in a hurried, trembling hand. It read almost the same as the diary. "If you were reading this, then you were in the same place I was. The darkness is real. It watches, it waits, and it consumes. I thought I could escape, but the forest is not so forgiving. The smell, the scratching, it's all true. It has taken me. I am no longer in control. If you value your life, leave now. The forest never forgets, and once you're trapped, there's no escaping its grasp. Burn this note and never return. The darkness will claim you just as it claimed me." The discovery of the note only deepened the mystery. It was as though the forest had claimed him, just as it had the others before him. The cabin remains a place of eerie legend. According to local lore, anyone who stays there for more than one night vanishes without a trace, leaving only whispers of their final moment. If you were reading this, take heed. We escaped, but the forest might still be waiting, patient and eternal. The diary's warnings are real, and the darkness in those woods is unforgiving. Be cautious. Never venture into those woods. The fear lingers, and the scratching echoes in our minds. we left with our lives. But who knows if the forest will ever truly let go of those who dare disturb its silence.